All right, guys, hold the farm. I didn't want to bore you with me laying out this horizontal thing. So, and what that equates to is figuring out where everything is going to lie in relation to the case. In other words, where the door side is, the window, the mullion in the middle, and so forth, so that we can figure out what will be the width of our raised panels and whatever. By going with what we had, meaning from 5 inches from this point here and the 2.5 inches on the rails for the doors and the face frame, it put the window in it just a little over 5 inches. That's just not enough. 5 inches is just too narrow. Now, now let me explain that to you very quickly. In a corner cabinet, because we have a wider piece at the bottom of the door and at the top of the door, we can get a nice deep shelf. But you really don't want to get much less than 9.5 inches in the middle. If you do, you can't get a plate or anything like that in it. That's even pushing. So 9.5 is kind of the minimum you want to be there. So what I did was I changed this point from here to here to 4.5 inches. Then I changed the face frame side. I changed this to 4.5, this to 2.25. And the side of the door will be 2.25. So as I walk over, I've got 2.25, which is the face frame. I've got 2.25, which is the door. I went to the center, came back 2.25, took that measurement, which I think it amounts to 12 and 3/4 inches, but I got the 1-inch mullion, so I took it out, and that left me with an exposure, my glass exposure being 5 7/8. I don't want to get any narrower than that. So I figured at 9.5 inches tall, I wanted to see what that looked like. So I went over and just cut a piece of plywood that was 5 7/8 by 9.5. And that's going to be the exposed part of the glass. Now the numbers over here on the left, which are 6 5/8 and 10 1/4, is adding 3/4 of an inch to each one of those dimensions. Why am I doing that? Well, we're going to be using a cope and stick, to make the doors. That's a good place for the router bits. And the reveal or the cut depth on that is 3/8 of an inch. So in order for my glass to fit in the groove that I'm going to be making, I got to add 3/8 on each side, which is 3/4. So I added 3/4 to the width and to the height. Then I come to the bottom. Now remember, our raised panel was 18 3/4 inches. And so what I did, well actually it was 19 inches, but by reducing the bottom here to 2 3/4, remember I had said it was 3, what I've done is reduced everything by a quarter. So this bottom of the door is now 2 3/4, the top is 2 1/4. That gives me an 18 3/4 inch raised panel. Now that's the exposed part. And it's going to give me a 12 3/4, same as up here, width. So just to show you that and see that, again I cut a piece and that'll make a nice raised panel. I've got good height and I'm in pretty good proportion here. It'll look nice. Then again, adding the 3/4, this will give me the actual size I need for my raised panels. All right, now what we have to go to is we have to do a story on the height of the top case. Now why are we doing all of this? And, you know, I understand this is the first show, and I'm showing you all kind of things here that are probably, a lot of you, it's confusing you. And I'm going to say this, that's okay, because I want you to see this, because again, as I said this before, we're going to keep referring back to this, and you're going to see how all of this makes sense. So when you're doing something, you can lay it out as well. All right, so this right here, all right, this is my side, my bottom side. This right here, this is my horizontal line. It's going to tell me where everything lays. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the top. Now, I've got the molding, and I showed you the molding. It's 7/8 of an inch right here. So what I'm going to do is I know that I'm going to go 7/8 of an inch. And, you know, everything in my shop's got glue and, oh well, including me. Y'all ain't going to believe this. This was a brand new sweatshirt when I walked in here this morning. But I had to do, I can't do nothing without getting glue all over me. Yeah, I know it. I told you I'm a slob. All right. So I'm going to draw in 7/8 of an inch. That's going to be my molding. Then I want that same inch above that. So I'm going to draw in an inch space. Now, to keep things in balance, I'm going to go 2 3/4 inches for the bottom of the door. Then, remember our glass, we're going to go 9 1/2. Then my mullion, right here, that's going to be an inch. Then another 9 1/2. Another inch. Okay, this is the glass. Now see what this is going to do. This will give us 9 1/2 inches. Actually, we can cheat that just a little bit by making our shelves just a little bit thinner. So we could actually, because this is an inch and this is an inch, you know, if we make our shelves 3/4 of an inch, we're going to be picking up 1/4 on each one, and that's a half, because we can actually set the shelf kind of down a little bit behind the mullion. So we could actually get 10 out of it. All right. Then I'm going to come up here again at 9 1/2. Then I'm going to come over here, then from 9, this is my top one. Then I'm going to mark my 2 1/4. That's this width in here. I want this point right here to match the side. So I'm going to go 2 1/4 inches. Then I'm going to go an inch above it. All right, so this is the door top, 2 1/4, excuse me, can't write, 2 1/4, and a 9 1/2 glass. This is a story. all into itself. If we hadn't done this well, I guess, you know, I mean, I can sit down and mathematically calculate it out, and I would have known that those windows weren't, but I haven't calculated anything on this. This is me laying it out from the rough. All right, now, I've got a piece of crown here, just a scrap, because we're just going to be using a cove crown for the molding. And it's going to look just like this. It's going to sit right on top. But what we're concerned with isn't this part. We're concerned with the height. That's of the actual crown, which is how high this crown is going to set, which in this case is 2 inches from the top. So we've got an inch space here. Now we have to add 2 inches to the top, because this is where we want our crown to fall. Then that molding is going to be the same profile as this. It's 7/8 as well. So I'm going to mark it. So this is going to be the 2 inches for the crown, 7/8 top molding. All right. So here's what we now know. If we measure this, we're now at 41¼ inches. All right, I'm going to write sides. I've got the top is 41¼ and the bottom was 36. (77¼ inches). That's going to be our corner cabinet. And we got to do one other thing. We got to measure the side. Now you see, remember we're going to do the back here. We're taking off the back so we don't have to go all the way to the corner. But let's go a little bit more. I don't want, and the reason I'm going to make this shelf a little wider is because, particularly the shelves, is that gives me somewhere to screw my pattern onto, so when we cut our shelves, we don't have any screw holes. But my side on this is going to wind up being, my finished side is going to wind up being about 24 inches. 23¾ So, okay, 77¼ tall. I'm going to put 25 wide, okay, parentheses, because it's going to actually be 23, let's say 23¾ 22¾ I forgot to subtract the 1. Okay, so let's just make it 25, and it's 22. Geez, guys, I can't remember nothing. (22¾ All right, so we need 2 sides. We're going to make these 80 tall by 25 wide. That's our glue up. We're going to glue it up, you know, make sure we got plenty of material. Now our shelves. We need 8 shelves. Right? Yeah, 8 shelves. The shelf needs to be, the actual shelf in this is going to be 18 1/4. Let's make it 19½. All right, it's going to be 18 1/4 actual It's 18 1/4 deep. And it's going to be about 43 1/4 wide, so I'm going to make them 45. All right, so I'm going to do 8 shelves. I'm going to do them 20 deep. I'll do them 19 1/2 deep. 19 1/2 deep. 45 long. All right. Now, what we got to do is we're going to come back and we're going to rough out an actual shelf pattern. And I'll show you why we're just going to rough it out. All right, I got a piece of 3/4 inch MDF. You could use half, whatever. All I'm going to do is what I've done is I've measured from this side over to here 45 inches. Down the center 22 1/2. Now I'm showing you another way actually of getting your 45. Now this shelf pattern, again, we're going to wind up cutting it down to the actual pattern, but we're going to use this for a glue up pattern to make sure we can get our shelves out. See, when I glue up wood, here's what I do. I always over glue. I never glue a panel up to size when I'm doing it. Now I'm set at 10 inches. From this point to this point is 10 inches. From this point to this point is 10 inches. All I'm doing is drawing a square. All right. Now, in order for me to make sure I've got a good, nice 45, all I got to do is go from the corner. Let me do it over here where you can see it good. I'm going to line up dead on my corner, right in my center, and that's 45 degrees. There's a lot of fancier ways you can do it, but this works. And again, this is just a rough out. And I'm going to show you why we need that. Now, all I'm going to do at the moment is just take a jigsaw and I'm just going to rough this out. Because again, this is just a rough size for us to use to glue up our shelves. And so then we're going to get to gluing up our shelves and our sides. Hey, I said we was going to rough it out. I meant rough. See, what we doing is we not building a corner cabinet. We fixing to build a corner cabinet. You understand? That means we're getting ready to. We just got to, you know, we got to make all the pieces and parts. Now somebody's going to ask me, well, you know, for the back cases and for the shelves and all, could you use plywood? Sure, absolutely. Wouldn't be an issue. But we're going to do it solid. We're going to do poplar. Now the reason we're going to use the shelf is I'm going to show you, the reason for this is to show you how to not waste wood. The other thing is I realize I cut this out of this piece of MDF. Could I have done the same exact thing we did on the plywood? Sure I could. I just wanted to give you another way of finding that 45. That's all. I don't know what happened there. Looks like I might have been using this for staining and dyeing something. It worked. All right, guys. It's glue time. Now, I haven't put any glue on these pieces because if I did, I'd have it all over the place and you wouldn't be able to see nothing. Show you how to save a little bit of wood when you're gluing up a corner cabinet. First thing, take your rough pattern and just draw you another one on a piece of paper or something. Now, I didn't do that. And I cut a board too short. So you don't do as I do, you do as I say. Make you another pattern out of some paper. And here's why. When you're gluing it up, you can obviously see what I'm doing. What I've done is by doing an offset, I don't need that. You can see where I traced it on here. I can do one way and reverse and do the other way. And you can see all I've got is these little corners are going to pretty much be my waist. That's it. What I'm trying to do, don't get out here and start gluing up big rectangles to cut these out of, or you're just going to make a terrible amount of waste. Now, comes the issue, and just to clear this up. You know, they always talk about when you're gluing something up, alternating your growth rings. I don't know how well you can see this on camera. This one's up, this one's down, this one's up. That does help to prevent cupping. So alternating your growth rings. Again, up, down, up. The other thing you're going to notice when I glue them up, I know I've seen it on TV as well. All the clamps on one face, meaning I always alternate clamps. One up, one down, one up. If you look carefully, particularly at a pipe clamp, the jaw on it isn't perfectly parallel. It will actually put more pressure on the outside than it does on the inside. And if you glue them up with all the clamps on one side, you can actually cause that piece of wood to glue into a bow. So one up, one down. Now, even the scraps will make a shelf, doing exactly the same thing in a singular. Now, gluing up the sides is a straightforward thing. That's just going to be two large panels. Now, if you don't have the means to work them and glue it up as one big panel, what was the bottom of it's 36, so glue you up a 37-inch panel. And the top of it, as I recall, was what, 44, 45 inches. So glue you up a upper panel 46 inches and go. You know, working it in the short is sometimes it's a lot easier than working in the long. Now, then comes the question of, do you biscuit this or put dowels in it? If you want to, go ahead. I will tell you up front, I do not. All I do is edge glue it. I did a test where I took biscuits allow for good alignment. They're nice for that. But as far as adding a tremendous amount of strength, If you're gluing if you're using it as a mortise and tenon where you're gluing an end grain to a flat grain, absolutely, biscuits add a tremendous amount of strength. In a flat grain to a flat grain, you know, I'll be honest, I don't really see the advantage. And I've done some testing, and in some classes, we biscuited some, and then we just glued some using the good modern day adhesives, and there was no issue. The other thing that I do is I always glue up thick. Now, I'm fortunate enough in the back, I got a 20-inch planer, and I got a 2244 drum sander. So I can actually put these shelves through after they're glued up and sand them dead flat. But I would imagine most of you guys don't have that. So here's the trick that before I got all of that stuff I used to use, because all I had was a little lunchbox planer. These are only 20 inches wide. I would glue them up just like you see. Then I would go back to the table saw and I would rip it right in half. In this case, these shelves are going to be painted. So to have that extra glue seam in there isn't going to hurt a thing. I would glue them up thick, rip them, and then take them back through my planer, then plane them all to dimension, to the exact thickness I want it. Now, what that does is that allows me, in this case, it allows, that's going to put a glue seam almost right here in the middle. But this piece of wood is reinforcing this, and this one this. And what that does is it helps you get them, it helps them stay straighter and flatter. All right? That just works. So in either case, you know, again, the sides are just a straight glue up. Now, I am told that I need to wrap this up for the first episode. And I'm kind of going to apologize a little bit, this being the first show, for so much time being spent on doing the story. But I must tell you, okay, as we progress through this project, you will see where that story becomes invaluable. I realize that some of you, it's boring sitting there watching it, so I apologize for that. But if you've never done it and you've never seen it done, it really, really helps you to be able to understand what you're doing and to avoid mistakes. So again, while it's one of those things that's maybe not real exciting and entertaining to watch, like I said, as this thing progresses along, you'll understand the value of that. All right, our next show, I'm going to have all my shelves glued up, the sides glued up, and we're going to start putting this baby together. Now, if there's anything in this episode that you do not understand, be sure to go to the forum that we have there for you and ask. You know, read, look. Don't be afraid to ask, guys. All right. Again, we've got everybody out here. We've got novices. We've got people don't have a clue what I'm talking about, and we got people out here saying, yeah, I've seen that before. So don't be afraid to ask. Remember, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. Because we want you to get this. This is all about you learning how to do woodworking successfully and as economically as possible to come up with some beautiful projects.